Arthas was a force to be reckoned with, and had a great effect on both factions. But before we examine what he changed, we need to understand how the world existed before Arthas' journey to Northrend. Following the Second War, the orcs who were captured were placed into internment camps. Having come down from their reliance on fell magic, many became lethargic and listless, essentially hollow shells of their former selves. At the same time, the Alliance began construction on Netherguard Keep, a costly project that, alongside the expense of maintaining the internment camps, placed significant strain on the human kingdoms. Over time, Gilneas and Stromgarde grew increasingly frustrated with King Tyrannus' decisions, particularly his refusal to simply execute the orcs. Eventually, the bonds between the kingdoms reached a breaking point. Quel'Thalas, which had joined the Alliance during the Second War as a reluctant ally, chose to withdraw entirely. King Anasterion believed the Alliance had abandoned his people during the Orc control assaults on their forests. While Tyrannus attempted to explain the situation, it mattered little. Anasterion withdrew Quel'Thalas from the Alliance. Though not all elves agreed with his decision, enough supported it to make the separation final. Following Quel'Thalas' departure, Gilneas and Stromgarde also chose to leave, citing what they viewed as King Tyrannus' poor leadership. It was during this time that Gen Greymane began construction on the Greymane Wall. Remaining within the Alliance were Stormwind, Ironforge, Gnomeregan, the Wildhammer clan of Airy Peak, and Dalaran. With these forces, Lordaeron appeared well defended, and while they would have been stronger with Gilneas, Stromgarde, and Quel'Thalas, they believed they could handle any threat that arose. The Horde, by contrast, was far smaller in nearly every respect. At this point, the orcs had escaped the internment camps and were either traveling with Thrall, hiding from the Alliance, or in some cases, fleeing back to Draenor through the Dark Portal. During Thrall's efforts to free the orcs, Orgrim Doomhammer was struck down by a lance through his back. With his dying breath, he named Thrall Warchief of the Horde. As Warchief, Thrall sought to help as many orcs as possible while steering them away from the endless war and focusing instead on preserving and rebuilding what little remained of their people. Across Azeroth, many clans still existed, though not all wished to formally join the new Horde. Now we turn to Arthas' effect on the Alliance. Arthas began his descent down a dark path driven by an all-consuming desire to protect his kingdom. That zeal blinded him to where and when he crossed the line. If an action helped combat the scourge in any way, it was justified in his mind. The culling of Stratholme stands as a clear example. Not only was Stratholme the second largest city in Lordaeron just behind the capital itself, it was also an important port city and the birthplace of the Knights of the Silver Hand, founded by Alonza's Fowl. Uther the Lightbringer and Saidan Dothrhan were among its earliest members, yet without considering alternatives, Arthas ordered the slaughter of the entire city. It became clear he would listen to no one, and anyone who stood in his way risked sharing the same fate. Arthas butchered the city's population with a small group of soldiers who chose to follow him, leaving Stratholme a burning husk where the scourge would flourish, and later establish one of its most important structures, Naxxramas. This, however, was only the beginning. Upon returning from Northrend, having slain and raised his own men as Death Knights, Arthas was welcomed home as a hero. As the people cheered, they didn't realize they were celebrating their executioner. Arthas greeted his father, and while King Tyrannus was overjoyed to see his son, Arthas saw only an obstacle. Taking Frostmourne in hand, he impaled his father, plunging Lordaeron and Azeroth itself into chaos. From that day forward, Capital City was lost to the Alliance. They not only lost a powerful stronghold, but also their leader at the time. Arthas would not be stopped. When Uther attempted to intervene, he was murdered by the former prince and one he had called a friend, alongside many other paladins who tried to oppose him. One of the next great casualties of Arthas' campaign was the city of Dalaran. Seeking the Book of Medivh, Arthas assaulted the city without restraint. Archmage Antonidas and his fellow mages fought desperately to defend their home, but the tide of undeath was overwhelming, and they fell in its defense. Following the city's fall, Arthas and Kel'Thuzad succeeded in summoning Archimonde into Azeroth, who later went on to destroy what remained of Dalaran, sending its spires crashing to the ground. However, before the assault fully began, Jaina Proudmoore was able to escape with a number of citizens, fleeing to Stormwind before the mages sealed the city's portals. With these losses, the Alliance found itself on the back foot, struggling merely to survive. The loss of allies and vast swaths of territory forced the Alliance to unify more tightly than ever before. While the orcs had once been their greatest threat, the Scourge posed an entirely different level of danger. An army that grew stronger with every fallen foe threatened extinction itself, and it was under Arthas' command. To survive, the Alliance would need to set aside its hatred for the Horde and work alongside its longtime rivals to confront the Scourge menace. The Horde too would be reshaped by these events. Though the new Horde was still in its infancy before the Third War, the 14-year gap between the Second and Third Wars saw Thrall leading the freed orcs to Kalimdor to hopefully find their freedom, and where they would later establish Orgrimmar at the end of the Third War. Now, by the time the Third War began, the Horde had gained key allies, including the Tauren and Trolls, alliances that would prove critical in the fight against the Scourge. But before Arthas struck Dalaran, he first turned his attention to Quel'Thalas. The Elven Kingdom believed itself protected by Bandonoriel and the Elf Gates, but this confidence proved misplaced. Darkhan Drathir betrayed his people, providing Arthas with the means to breach the defenses and disable Bandonoriel. Arthas unleashed devastation upon Eversong Woods, carving a path of death and decay through the land. Elven forces were cut down and razed into undeath, swelling the ranks of the Scourge. Among those who fell was Sylvanas Windrunner. To punish her defiance, Arthas raised her as a banshee and forced her into servitude, compelling her to slaughter her own people. By the end of the campaign, nearly 90% of the elven population had been annihilated, and the survivors would rename themselves the Blood Elves in honor of the fallen. In time, Sylvanas regained her free will. She gathered other undead warriors of Quel'Thalas who had broken free from Arthas' control and attempted to kill him, though the attempt failed. Eventually, she claimed the ruins of Capital City, now known as the Undercity, as her base of power. After negotiations with the Horde leadership, Sylvanas and her people, now called the Forsaken, joined the Horde, and their inclusion greatly bolstered the Horde's strength. Quel'Thalas would later join the Horde as well. With the addition of both the Forsaken and the Blood Elves, the Horde emerged stronger than it had been in recent times. While these people suffered immense losses individually, their integration reshaped the Horde into a far more formidable force. When Arthas finally made his ultimate move against the factions, the Alliance and Horde united to confront the Lich King atop Icecrown Citadel. After a grueling battle, Arthas was slain. Yet even in death, his impact endured. The Scourge remained a threat, roaming Azeroth in vast numbers. In one final twist of fate, Bolvar Fordragon, who was assumed to be dead, took control of the Scourge, donning the helm of domination, for there must always be a Lich King. After countless losses on both sides, including figures such as Dranosh Sourfang, Uther, and King Tyrannus Menethil, Azeroth was forever changed. Arthas reshaped the world, though not in the way the young prince once imagined, and not by hands he ever intended. Now this one I had gone down multiple rabbit holes. There was so much I could have added, gone into more description of, done this, done that. So I really tried to focus it on just the factions themselves and what they were doing. And I tried to find more about the Horde at that time, but from what I could find, it was basically just Thrall trying to escape to Kalimdor. So it really wasn't much more other than Thrall occasionally gaining a few allies such as the Tauren and Trolls, and making his way across the ocean to hopefully settle in Kalimdor. And I'm really hoping that I did okay on this one. This is the first time I've ever done a video in this way or style. There's so much I could add to this. There are so many more rabbit holes to go down. Considering, for example, what if Arthas had stayed good? What if Arthas didn't raise Sylvanas to be a banshee and then she went on her vendetta? And many other things. So, hopefully you enjoyed. In the future, I plan to do other videos like this, kind of effects on things, theory crafting, stuff like that. So, this was very much dipping my toe in the water, and hopefully it was good. Either way, thanks for checking it out, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Take care of yourself.